Here is a Peak 750W power station. I decided to overhaul this thing because I noticed the pump become weak. So one thing is I removed the pump from this location and the battery from here. By the way, the battery after a couple of years of usage also become weak. So what I'm going to do is that I have plenty of pumps, so I'm going to remove the pump and use this whole space for battery. And meanwhile, I'm going to convert it into lithium-ion battery. So you can see this is the one. It is longer than this, but much more energy storage. So, and it's also lighter. It's pretty heavy, but much lighter than this. This is more like 10 pounds or something like that. Yeah, this is more like a 5 pounds or something. So anyway, you see I have 3 cells in series to give us maximum 12.6, because each cell max at 4.2 volts, so 12.6 volts, and I have 12 cells in parallel to give us more energy. So by doing this, you see this is like a 7.2 amp hour. 7.2 times 12 gave us about 85 watts hour. This one gave us more like if we use like a 2.5 amp hour each cell, which should give us around roughly 360 to 400 watts hour. So will be 4 times more than this one. You see, this is, you have to have a balanced managed system, because you have 3 cells. You need to distribute it when you charge it, distribute the current evenly among the cells, and to have all the cells equally charged. You need this one. This is called 3-cell BMS. So for me, because the space is quite tight, let me show you. If I put this in, you see it's pretty much occupied the whole thing. And that's the reason I didn't use those plastic things to hold each of these cells. I put them all together tightly. This is not the best way, so I recommend you actually use those plastic frames to hold the cell. And probably you can move this balance board on top of it, so you might be still able to fit like roughly 12 cells in here. If you can, just do 11. I think that's totally okay. For me, I do this way. It's a little bit unsafe, especially consider the wraparound tape may limit the heat dissipation and so on and so forth. But because we are not going to use it for very high current, so we're not going to in both charge and usage, so we're not going to generate lots of heat. I think the only case we're going to use high current is the jump start. We're going to have jump start. This is also one of the most benefit compared with a generic power inverter, like whatever you can find on Amazon. 360 watts hour, you probably want to pay $400 also, but they don't have like a jump start capability. So this is the lithium ion cell part. One important thing is you don't want directly replace this battery in place of this. The reason is the maximum charge of the lead acid battery actually is about 14.8 volts. That is definitely too high for this. This is 12.6, so about 2 volts higher than this. You're going to damage the cells, but also overcharge might cause some explosion and whatever. It's very dangerous. I saw many YouTube videos do the direct replacement with a 3-cell battery to the traditional battery. It's no good for like a UPS and many other applications. It's definitely no good, very dangerous. The way I deal with this is because the difference between the two is about 2 volts, and each diode gave us about 0.7 to 1 volt kind of a voltage drop depending on the current. So let's say 0.7 voltage drop. So if we have 3 diodes in series, we're going to have about a little over 2 volts voltage drop. So basically 3 diodes in series with this will equal to the voltage of this. And this is what I'm going to do here. So that you can see this is the charge from the 110 volts source, the power supply. You plug this into here. So this brings in like a 14.8 kind of volts to charge the original battery. So what I'm going to do is, actually I already done it, is to use series 3 diode. 1 diode already soldered on board and 2 series to give us the voltage drop we want, and that way it's much safer. So you can see you need to do some work here. Basically I use the switch originally used for the pump because I don't need a pump anymore. So I just cut the board and isolate the switch so I can use that switch, and meanwhile I can bypass that circuit, use a 2 series diode. And another thing I'm doing is I want also to be able to charge with the cigarette lighter, like in a car or from a solar panel. So from car and solar panel, most of the time the highest current also around 14.6, 14 point some volts. So this one come in, I use the existing hole for the pump tubes, and I bring in that wire, and I this is, by the way, the cigarette lighter socket in the front. I use this to get out 12 volts power supply from the battery, but I use these only to support the component here. Basically, you can see I'm wiring a 1 ohm, 5 watts, 1 ohm. This is the current limiter. So because the internal impedance of the battery in your car is very low, if you don't have a current limiter at the starting point, if your battery is depleted, the current could be extremely high. So you want to put like a 1 ohm current limiter. And meanwhile, this current limiter will also help us to measure the current of charging, and then in series with another diode to charge this battery. So we're going to have 3 diodes in series to charge this battery. So this thing is a fuse, recoverable or resettable fuse. To limit the current you're going to use, draw from this 12 volt socket. So by doing this, we have a lot of much more energy storage and more functionality and lighter and everything. So basically, You know, I think I had this power station about a few years, 5 years or whatever. Purchases around $50. So now I'm going to convert it to a $500 kind of device that I can really use. This is really good. And I think if you got a chance, you can give it a try. If you have something in hand similar to this, you can do similar things. By the way, this one comes with the 110 volts inverter. So I'm going to use this because the 110 volt socket there. So I can use this inverter for some other devices I'm going to together use with this power station. So this is nice. Not very high power. I believe about 100 to 150 watts kind of outlet. It should be sufficient for laptops or some camera charge or phone charge or whatever. So this is another useful stuff. So I'm going to reuse this. The only function I'm missing, as I mentioned earlier, is the pump. I really don't need the pump, and the pump becomes very weak. This is what I'm going to do. So I'm also almost completed everything. The last step is to drop this battery cells in this place and solder everything and connect everything together. You need to be very carefully about the shortage and everything. So, you know, when you especially handle these kind of cells, they're very high current capacity. So if you don't do the right thing, it could be a little dangerous. So be careful. The battery is in. So I use these gauge 4 cables, and this one is the negative side. Because it's too cumbersome, I just use 2 in parallel 12 gauge wire. It should be, I think for 12 gauge working current is about 40 amps and max is about 300 amps. So 2 of them 80 amps working current and 600 amp peak. It should start most of the cars, jump start. The thing is, for jump starts, for these kind of battery jump start, you definitely want to connect the battery and let the battery charge the depleted battery on the car for some time. And when it started, basically the current was supplied both through this battery as well as the car battery. So that's how normally people do. You don't want to just fully rely on these batteries to jumpstart your car. It's okay, but most of the time, you know, it's not working properly. This one is the inverter, so it's also mounted. I put some insulation material here, also padding. So to prevent the battery to move around, I also use this plate you see to fix on the screws. We can hold the battery tightly. It won't move during transportation. So this is almost all. And I've tried to charge and everything works fine. So next step is we'll connect the jump start cable to this post. Originally this post is a switch. Now I use it just to fix the connection between the battery and the jump start cable. Otherwise, you don't want it to floating around inside here and touch anything or rub anything. This is no good. So fix them in place will help, securely hold the jump start cable in place. That's very much it is. We'll give it a try once we assemble everything together. The cigarette light charge socket, you can wrap it around this post originally for the pump tube, pump hose. So I just wrap the wire around and hold this socket in place. When I need it, just unwrap it and plug it into a cigarette light socket. So everything assembled together. Again, this is the jump starter peak. I removed the label. So you can see the jump starter cable, negative, positive. And again, this is originally it has a pump, came with a pump. I removed the pump, and I use the through hole for wiring out this cigarette lighter plug for charging the power station. I'll mention it later. Basically, the reason is very much it's more convenient and faster because most of the time we use this in a car. And if you look at the original charge is from this transformer, you connect it, and it only supply about 600 milliamp for the charge current. And that kind of current to charge get about 4 times of more energy. So that means the original charging into a lead acid battery takes about 10 to 12 hours from empty to full. So this one will take 4 times more time, like 40 hours, almost two full days. So that kind of slow, but it still works because most of the time you don't need a fast charge. However, this cigarette lighter charge port will allow faster charging, probably give us roughly, I would say reduce the charging time down to 10 to 12 hours again because the current is about 4 times more. So we keep all the switches, the socket. This is the cigarette lighter socket, so we can use it for to use when we need a 12 volt supply. In many cases, you need 12 volts. And of course, we have this USB port. So we also have this 110 volts inverter. And we have, again, this light. And this switch will be whether you use it. And it will also show that how much power remain whether you use this port. So you turn it off. And this test, again, show you the energy left. And again, this is for inverter. Same thing, so you see the light on. But we don't need this anymore. I use the 2 posts to fix these cables to make it more secure, so we don't need to worry about the internal connections and everything. So now we can plug in this power supply. So plug in the cable. You can see it shows start to charge. It takes some time, and of course this charging port will be much faster. So let's unplug this. We will give it a try and see the inverter. So I use the light, LED light, 110 volts light. So you can plug in to this port, switch on. See, light is working. So our inverter is working perfectly. And of course I tried the USB, work properly as well. So that's very much it is. So we can come back to this circuit, how we do the modification. The difference between the 2 batteries, you know, the lithium-ion versus the lead acid, is the charging voltage. So this is the change. So it's not significant change, quite easy. If you have some hands-on experience, it's relatively easy. The difference is the lead acids require like about a full charge voltage about 14.6 to 14.8 volts. That is definitely too high for lithium-ion batteries. I use 3-cell lithium-ion. Each cell max about 4.2, so 3 cells will be 12.6. So we here we have about 2 volts different. So the way we do it is, we use 3 series diode, high current diode. We can each diode about 0.7 voltage drop. So 3 is about 2 volts also. So in both paths, the cigarette lighter path also about 14 some volts on the generator. And also the power line, like the 110 volts through its original charging. So by putting these diode in series, you will get about 12.6 volt max, so that you can charge your lithium ion properly. And this is very much the thing you do. A little bit more is just, I changed this switch function. Originally, there's a pump switch. Now I remove the punch. I use it as a switch to switch on and off this 12 volts port. So if you have any questions, just leave it at the comment area. I'll take a look and try to answer as soon as possible. Thank you. Bye.